Hello. Here's good news for photographers that have a brain, and not many do. Some people are going to hate me for saying that one. Is that, you know how you have pizza dough? There's only so many ways you could actually, well, there's actually a lot of ways you could stretch the pizza dough to create various things like pizzas and cookies and pot pies and everything. Anyway, silicon wafer technology. I should have grabbed my silicon wafer over here. There's only so many ways that you can slice and dice silicon wafer technology. Now, of course, we now have backside illuminated sensor technology, which, by the way, is going to be in the Fujifilm X-T3 to be either announced or certainly so released later this year of 2018. But the point being is that camera manufacturers are going to have to, and they know this, the technicians there know this, they've known it for many years, start expanding tangentially. By this we mean including artificial intelligence integration, which Canon recently announced a fingerprint sensor for their lenses and cameras, presumably to lock out other users just like an iPhone has. Of course, this is also bad news because it means your information, your ID might be attached to photos and the metadata when you upload. It's like, yeah, Jim Bob took this picture at this longitude and latitude. Let me get into Big Brother stuff, but artificial intelligence for a faster determination of, and I've been told this too, this is not my speculation, by a really, really bigwig in Japan about what Nikon and Fujifilm are doing. Because there's only, like I said, there's really so many ways, and of course, most people don't realize that a camera is certainly not a sensor, and of course I've said this millions of times, that a camera is an image processor. For example, the Nikon D750, for example, has the exact same sensor in it as the Nikon D610, but it had a lot better high ISO performance. Well, the reason for that is how the actual data was interpolated for. And of course, ISO is not part of exposure. ISO is applied gain. So a camera, fundamentally, getting to the nitty-gritty of it, is a data cruncher. And one camera is geared one way or the other, depending on how the camera manufacturer wants the camera to be marketed. This camera is great for low-light performance. So we're obviously going to have really vast improvements in frames per second. We've got faster SD cards, XQD cards. And the major improvement, of course, has been backside illuminated sensor, BSI sensor, and the other. See, this is how these camera manufacturers are trying to squeeze the silicon wafer. Let me grab the silicon wafer here. Are trying to squeeze. I've got so many of these. Are trying to squeeze the silicon wafer technology 9 ways to Sunday. The next thing, I'm sure you've heard about it, is the curved sensor. Kind of like the back of the eye. You know the great advantages of the curved sensor, your rods and cones at the back of your eye, is that it necessitates, wonderfully so, a much less complicated lens design. However, unfortunately, creating curved sensors means that the sensors will have to be created one at a time. Say, for example, unlike current sensors, which can create it on flat silicon wafers, the lithography, you can make quite a number of sensors on a single silicon wafer, depending on the size of the sensor, of course. But camera manufacturers are expanding themselves tangentially. So we've got curved sensor, we're going to have adaptive resistance sensors, where you'll have basically unlimited dynamic range. High ISO performance will be increased, and of course this is all in line with the signal processing. Artificial intelligence applied to your camera. Basically what I'm getting at, other than the BSI sensor tech, which has been around now for quite a few years, and the curved sensor, which is going to start being implemented within the next 2 years or so, 90% of future camera development is not going to be sensor level, because we've already really reached the limitations of pixel pitch. This is also, too, why between the old Nikon D4, which is certainly still a valid camera, and the new Nikon D5, which is only 4 more megapixels, let's see, what is that, 6 years down the road and only 4 more megapixels? Why is that? Because this was the low-light beast of its day. Certainly so signal interpolation as far as adaptive resistance technology for applying it, because noise has certain frequencies, has certainly so improved. There's only so many ways you can stretch silicon wafer technology. This is the reason why the new Nikon D5 is only 4 more megapixels than Nikon D4. What this means for the average photographer too is that there'll be a couple groups of photographers, well really two. There'll be the gear sluts, the button sniffers, that will did I say gear slut? They're going to have the latest and the greatest. And then the other people with a brain are going to realize that these are marginal increases that are mostly frou-frou. And that, older cameras like this, as the XT2 becomes, is going to be retired. Not retired. Is going to be superseded by the XT3 later this year. And it's going to be a BSI sensor. Going to have a touch screen, much faster autofocus. But I mean, does that in any way diminish from the XT2 being wonderful? I mean, what the hell happens when the XT3 comes out? Does that mean the XT2 is obsolete? Well, hell no. I mean, it's just as good of a camera then as it is now. Same thing with the Nikon D4. Nikon D5 is a horrible camera, by the way. Not only is it insanely overpriced, it has a anti-aliasing filter. Way overpriced, horrible camera. It's been a horrible seller for Nikon, too. Not only that, Nikon is early, well, not early, but they're going to come out with the Nikon D5S, I guess, for introduction next year. But of course, they're working on their mirrorless camera they're focused on right now. The Nikon D4 is as valid a camera now as it ever was. Improvements since 2012, really. It's like, well, when did camera technology peak? It really peaked around about 2014 or so. I mean, once we reached the max gain of pixel pitch at 3 to 4 micrometers and advanced the signal imaging processing off of the clocking of that gain at the photo site via the main board on these cameras, nothing is really, vastly improved fundamentally so far as image quality. Things have improved, of course, buffer, faster cards, faster autofocus, track and acquire, of which most of you don't need that. You won't admit it. It's like, I want faster autofocusing. Like, what do you shoot? I shoot architectures, portraits, and landscapes. So why again do you need faster autofocus? I mean, do you have a problem with your buildings moving? Do you have a problem not being able to tell the people that you're shooting to sit still? Do you need faster autofocus? It's good news for a lot of people because there are going to be all these cameras that are going to be for sale by the gear sluts. They have to have the latest and greatest. So there's going to be a huge pile of really awesome cameras available in surplus, dirt cheap, and no one's going to have any excuse anymore to be able to afford a really awesome camera. And that's already starting to happen. I mean, hell, look at it. Look at Nikon D800Es going for $1,100. Nikon D3s, I've seen a lot of them sell for, toughest digital camera ever made, for like $650. My God, that's cheap. Camera manufacturers can only start expanding into adaptive resistance sensors, curve sensors, because they always have to have new crap to sell you, It's not like what you have isn't good enough already. And it is good enough already. Artificial intelligence, adaptive resistance technology, better buffer, slightly faster autofocus. Does anybody really have an issue with autofocus on like a Nikon D850 or D500 or XT2? No. Skills account for a lot too, People say, well, the Nikon D4 autofocus is not that very good for sports, action, and wildlife. And it's like, why? Sports have not gotten any faster. Nor birds, nor wildlife. Wildlife, birds, and people doing like Olympic sports, which is fast, that has not gotten any faster, ever. People, think about that statement a bit. Wait a second there. Sports has not gotten any faster in X number of decades. Pretty sure like even in the 1920s, people were running really fast and pole vaulting really fast. That hasn't gotten any faster. Pretty sure birds are still flying at the same speed for both takeoff and landing and in flight. They're still flying at the same. So yeah, if it were perfectly good enough for the Nikon D, when the Nikon D4 came out, 2012, people were like, oh my god, this is wonderful. All those birds and that action and the photojournalism and the wildlife has not gotten any faster since then. So what are you complaining about? Is that you want something just a little bit faster that you necessarily don't need because you lack the skills to be able to... Yeah, that's actually what it is. I consider myself pretty damn lazy. And other than for video users where I know it's incredibly important, people that are actually complaining that they need IBIS, in-body image stabilization, I laugh so hard. It's like those people are even lazier than I am. Do not need IBIS. Do you know also, too, that when it comes to IBIS technology, that if you have like just amazing IBIS, which doesn't really exist, but if you have amazing IBIS, if you're shooting like a really slow shutter speed and your subject is moving, the best IBIS on planet Earth, I mean, like say IBIS is 10 times better than it is now, which is not going to happen, but let's just say it was, and you're shooting at 1/20th of a second. It's like, wow, I've got perfect, let's see, yeah, but your subject is moving. You see, 1/20th of a second is 1/20th of a second is 1/20th of a second. So even if you have amazing IBIS and your subject is moving, IBIS is not going to stop the motion blur from your subject because your shutter speed is your shutter speed is your shutter speed is your shutter speed. Did you ever think about that one? Tell that to IBIS assholes. That's what I'm starting to call them, IBIS assholes. I know IBIS is really, really useful for video, but you don't need it for photography. Tell that to someone who's always talking, I need IBIS. It's like, well, yeah, so you can handhold shoot at like 1/20th of a second? Exactly! It's like, well, do you know if your subject is moving, that your shutter speed is your shutter speed is your shutter speed is your shutter speed. And that means that your subject is going to be blurred, even though everything else will be perfectly sharp, because you have IBIS. But IBIS does not stop subject blur, because your shutter speed is your shutter speed is your shutter speed. People, for some reason, can't connect the dots. But this is good news for photography buffs that are looking for awesome gear, because now there's just going to be frou-frou expansion, not up, but out. Kind of like, unlike New York, where they can't expand out, you just expand up. The limitations of silicone wafer technology. Other than curved sensors and BSI, BSI has been out now for quite some time, the limits have been reached. And the camera manufacturers know this fact. And that's why they're coming out with artificial intelligence, frou-frou, nonsense, poppycock, blah, blah, blah. All the little stupid stuff that'll make you think you need to buy, but you don't really need to buy. Oh my god, the latest camera's got touch screen, finger swipe, IBIS. Yeah, you're just a lazy. You're even lazier than I am. Lazier. That's hard to believe. It's like, I'm even lazier than the fat guy with tattoos. He doesn't need IBIS. Yeah. Oddly enough, they taught you something back in photography school. It's called skills. Yeah, skills to handhold correctly. Skills to know what you're doing. This is why some of the best shooters in the world are using manual focus lenses on old Leicas. There's no technology there. They know about proper exposure, composition, and they can set a focus trap. There's something else nobody need to make a video on a focus trap. I think I made a video before already on focus traps. You know what a focus trap is? I hope you know what a focus trap is. Focus trap is what people with skills learn. People that want faster autofocus, artificial intelligence, they don't know what a focus trap is. That was a dirty joke. You just didn't get it. Thank you. Bye.